Hello everybody, Dominic aka Amon back, and today we're going to be talking about rapper, producer, and everyone's favorite Madvillain, MF Doom. While not the most popular rapper ever, more big in the underground with his biggest album only debuting at 178 on the Billboard, he is still quite a respected artist, with many, even Eminem and Tech Nine, legends in the game, revering him as one of the most skilled and talented. He is also one of the most creative minds, building his own entire universe of features, producers, artists, having their own beef and tracks together all throughout his discography using just him and the people he knew. 2004 marked MF Doom's biggest year, in which he would release this record, Food, that we will be reviewing today. He would also release Madvillain alongside Madlib, which we will be reviewing today as well. Other than those projects, he released several mixtapes, instrumental and a cappella mixtapes, for the special Herbs and Spices collection. He would also release VV2 or Venomous Villain under his alias Victor Vaughn, one of several aliases that Doom would take on throughout the years, starting in 2003. 2004 would mark MF Doom's biggest year, and while that may sound lucrative, it really wasn't that impressive, unfortunately. At the time he was alive, he really did not see that much mainstream success, and not many people really talked about him. I remember everyone was bringing him up after his death, and I believe it was 2020, and everyone was bringing up how Madvillain was like a masterpiece of a record, a masterclass in sampling and production and collaboration, produced by both Madlib and MF Doom himself. And produced by both Madlib and MF Doom himself, typically acting under the moniker of Butterfingers when he produced his own records. He maintained the MF Doom moniker for this one. And while alive at the time of its release, he was not alive to see its peak success today. Madvillainy is personally one of my favorite underground hip-hop albums, as well as Food, which just so happens to be my favorite solo MF Doom project. And while it may be a little odd for the casual listener, with all of MF Doom's at times off-putting samples, unique beats and flows, and references surrounding food throughout the entire disc, it is still one of my favorite, and one of the first albums I bought myself on vinyl. And without further ado, we will be rating these albums, starting with Food by MF Doom. First up, we have Beef Rap, a great opening track to this album, with its old school production and drums, as well as its sample from a 1981 episode of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. This is the perfect example of what you should expect from MF Doom's production and any of his work on this album to come. As such, for it being a good representative track, I gave it an 8. I considered it a 9, but I do not feel this track is as catchy or as replayable as some of his other ones. Next up, we have Hoe Cakes. I like this better than the intro. I feel like it has better flows, better production, and catchier, more memorable lines. It's also one of the more viewed on this album, so I gave it a 9 out of 10. Next, we have Potholders. I'd say it's about on par with Beef Rap. I like Beef Rap a little bit more simply because it fits so well as an intro, and I like the fact that it samples Spider-Man, because I like Spider-Man. But I am willing to give Potholders an 8 out of 10 as well. Next, we have One Beer. Obviously a 10 out of 10. If I wasn't to give this a 10, then no other track on this record should get a 10 in my opinion. One Beer is a great song and the standout track on this album. The minute I hear the beat, I instantly know what the song is. I'm at attention and ready to listen, awaiting MF Doom to give me that opening line, "There's only one beer left." The beat itself, as I said, is a classic, standing well on its own, using its sample from a 1975 jazz funk track called Huit Octobre 1971, made by the French band Cortex. I probably butchered that name because it is a French name, but forgive me. Next track on the album at number 5, we have Deep Fried Friends. Another solid track, nothing too crazy though, so I gave it an 8 out of 10. Next we have Poo Putt Platter. This is actually one that I do not remember very much from the album, so I gave it a 7 out of 10. Next, we have Filet-O Rapper. A solid track, I consider giving it an 8, but it just doesn't stand up to the other tracks as much in my opinion, so I gave it a 7 as well. Track 8, we have Gumbo. I gave it a 6 out of 10. You may be wondering why I gave Gumbo a 6 out of 10. It's really not a bad track. It's a solid interlude, but that's the thing. It's just an interlude. It's just MF Doom's production with a sample or recorded snippet over it, and that's really about it. It's nothing impressive, and it's only 50 seconds long, so it gets a 6 out of 10. Track 9, we have Fig Leaf by Carbonate. Solid track, 7 out of 10. After that, we have Con Carne, which I also gave a 7 out of 10. And Genesis, I probably butchered that name too, 7 out of 10. Track 12, we go back up with Con Queso. I like this one. I like the production and flows on it a bit more than the last three we listened to, so I gave it an 8 out of 10. Track 13, Rap Snish Nishes. This is another standout track on the album and one of MF Doom's biggest tracks alongside One Beer. It would be criminal for me not to give it a 10, so just like One Beer, for its flows, lyricism, and production, and how well known it is for MF Doom's catalog, I gave this one a 10 out of 10. Vomit Spit, horrible title. Every time I see that title, it reminds me of Puke by Eminem. But this record is not nearly as bad as Puke by Eminem. In fact, I like this one, so I gave it a 9 out of 10. And for the final track on Food, we have Cookies, which is a 7 out of 10. Solid outro. I don't really have a problem with it, but it's not a standout track, and I feel like he could have done better if he wanted to, so I gave it a 7 out of 10. If you add all these scores up and divide it by the average number of tracks, which is 15, you get an average of 7.9 for this album score. And personally, I disagree with that. I would give this album a 9 or a 10, and today we are going to be settling on a 9 because I simply do not feel like this record should be called a 10 out of 10 when I rated about half of the tracks on this album a 6 or a 7. Moving on to MF Doom and Madlib's Madvillainy, we have track 1 with the Illest Villains, another solid intro and a good way to start off the album. It lets me know right away what I'm getting into and what I should expect, 8 out of 10. Accordion, a standout track on the album, another big one on MF Doom's catalog, gave it a 9 out of 10. Meat Grinder, I actually like more than Accordion personally, and I know some people may disagree with that, and some of you may be wondering why I prefer Meat Grinder over Accordion, and well, it's for a really dumb reason. I don't like the accordion used throughout Accordion. I prefer the beat used on Meat Grinder more, and that just is what it is. 9 out of 10. Next, we have Bistro. Gave it an 8 out of 10 because it's a solid track, but it's nothing crazy. I would not put it on par with Accordion or Meat Grinder. Same for Raid, track 5, so I gave it an 8 out of 10. America's Most Blunted is another one a lot of people remember off this project, and I considered giving it a 9 out of 10, but I settled on an 8 out of 10. Sick Fit, this is where I feel like the album goes down a little bit, and I didn't enjoy it as much as the previous 6 tracks, so I gave Sick Fit a 7 out of 10. Track 8, Rainbows, I also gave a 7 out of 10. Same reason for Sick Fit. Track 9, Curls, I feel like the album starts to go back up a bit here, and I gave Curls an 8 out of 10. Track 10, Do Not Fire, I gave it a 7 out of 10. It's just not one on the album that I go back to and repeat a lot. Track 11, Money Folder, I gave it an 8 out of 10. Track 12, Shadows of Tomorrow, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Track 13, Operation Lifesaver, aka Mint Test. This is an interesting title, and it's one that I remember off the record just for the title alone, but that isn't enough to save it. 7 out of 10 for Operation Lifesaver. Track 14, Figaro, 9 out of 10. Another standout track on the album and a solid listen. Track 15, Hardcore Hustle, 7 out of 10. Track 16, Strange Ways, 8 out of 10. Track 17, Fancy Clown. This is one that previously I had listened to on my channel and rated, and I gave it a score more closer to a 7 or 8. However, after re-listening to that track and giving it some time and considering it, I can agree that it is a solid listen and one of the better tracks on the album, for not only its lyrics and production, but the message behind it. So yeah, I gave Fancy Clown a 9 out of 10 this time around. Track 18, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Track 20, Great Day, I gave it an 8 out of 10. And for our final track, track 21, Rhinestone Cowboy, I gave it 9 out of 10 as well. If you add up all these tracks and average it together, that's a score of 8.0, which is zero point 0.1 higher than Food. Personally, I would say this album is a 10 out of 10, however. It is a cornerstone in collaborative production and work, with Madlib and MF Doom bringing some of their best beats and techniques to the table. So yeah, 10 out of 10 record for Madvillainy, 9 out of 10 record for Food. Well, that'll be all, everyone. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell, because what the hell. Also, leave a like and hype. It really helps out the channel. If I don't see you next time, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.